And we begin tonight with one of the most iconic heists of the 20th century, the Great Train Robbery of 1963, when a group of at least 12 men robbed a British mail train heading from Glasgow to London. They struck at 3 a.m., manipulating the train signals and cutting railway telephone wires, boarding the train with clubs and iron bars, smashing windows, you name it, and then escaping with a staggering £2.6 million, equivalent to $70 million today. The armed robbery would spawn books and TV shows. There was prison time and fugitives, even an anonymous insider, and a massive manhunt for the robbers, which included Ronnie Biggs, who underwent plastic surgery in Paris after escaping from prison to escape capture. It became known as the heist of the century. It was big. But what we are seeing now is bigger and even more audacious. And it is happening right now in plain sight. It's an open-air bank robbery, this time by the super rich, who are already even richer from Trump's win. Here's the Bloomberg Billionaires Index. The morning after the election, it's a daily ranking of the world's richest people. Among the top 10, and these names will sound very familiar, Elon Musk, ranked the world's richest person, is the biggest gainer. His wealth jumped by a whopping $26.5 billion. Amazon founder Jeff Bezos was another top gainer. His wealth grew by $7.1 billion. It's the biggest daily increase since Bloomberg's wealth index began in 2012. Collectively, Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, and their top 10 ultra-rich friends added $64 billion to their fortunes. Kind of makes sense now, doesn't it? Why some of them didn't endorse a candidate this year, despite supporting Democratic candidates and causes in the past, or why Bezos defended his decision to withhold the Washington Post's endorsement of Vice President Kamala Harris. And it also makes sense why Elon Musk, who has arguably done more than anyone to help elect Trump, put in more than $75 million right into MAGA coffers and basically bought Twitter to turn it into a right-wing propaganda loudspeaker, the loudest on the internet, in fact. Turns out, Trump's promise to make America great again is simply a cover for his and his billionaire buddies' plot to turn us into an oligarchy, ushering in an era of extreme deregulation, laws that keep big business in the driver's seat and labor in the back, tax cuts for the rich and the super rich, and privatizing everything from education to healthcare, so that big corporations can charge you for all of it and go from billionaires to trillionaires, all backed by the most pro-rich, pro-corporate Supreme Court in history, literally constructed by Leonard Leo and the Heritage Foundation, a court that will probably boast 2 new young members when Clarence and Alito inevitably step down to go on lifetime paid vacation starting on January 20, 2025, which maybe we should rename Money Train Day, instead of Inauguration Day, be more accurate. And America's new oligarchs did all of this by lying to working class people of color and getting them to fight each other out here in these social media streets and ignore the real bad guys, the oldest tactic of white supremacy, where working people are scrapping it out for a piece of the pie, while the rich eat the whole entire pie and laugh all the way to the bank. Oh, and by the way, the people who will suffer include many of the people who voted for Trump, hoping he'd toss them some coins. But you know what? The joke's on them, too. Fueled by disinformation, racism, misogyny, apathy, ignorance, and in some cases, just plain economic desperation, America opened the bank vault and let the robbers in. It's the greatest heist in history, brought to you by Trump and our new ruling oligarch class. Joining me now is Ali Velshi, host of Velshi, and David K. Johnston, professor of practice at the Rochester Institute of Technology. And I want to get into with you guys what some of these billionaires plan to do now that they essentially own this country. Ali, Elon Musk gets to reorganize the government any way he likes. Apparently, they're going to create a new agency for him so that he can slash spending. And then what?
Look, there's a couple things to think about here. One is, forget the taxes, right? It's going to be lower corporate taxes, but corporations already pay a substantially lower tax than they do in most other developed countries. This is, you hinted at this is about government contracts and deregulation, right? Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos both have government contracts. People have canceled their subscriptions. The Washington Post, forget it. The Washington Post is not the money-making venture here. It's the government contracts that Amazon Web Services has. Cancel your Prime subscription before you cancel your Washington Post stuff. But they've got back-end web things that they supply the government and space, right? So you've got that side of things, and then you've got the massive deregulation. There's a woman named Lena Khan, 35 years old. She's the head of the Federal Trade Commission, not brought any new laws in. She's just decided to enforce the laws on the books about, keeping competition alive. Everybody in business America hates her. She'll be gone, one assumes, soon enough. These companies want to merge. They want to take over other companies. They want no new regulation. They don't want the government involved in their business, and that's what they're going to get. It's why big oil supported Donald Trump. It's why big tech is supporting him. The deregulation here is going to be the biggest part of this. The wealth gains are quite something. Never seen anything like it. But the control that they're going to have over the economy is going to be bigger.
Yeah, and David Cay Johnston, what do the working class people get out of all of that?
They get their pockets picked. We already have, as I've written about in my economics books, a whole series of stealth ways that the government reaches in on behalf of very wealthy people, and they take a penny here and a quarter there and a dollar somewhere else, and they redistribute it to people at the top. Now, there is one thing you said, Joy, I want to address. I think it's very important. There's no such thing as deregulation. There is only re-regulation, which enhances the power of the oligarchs, which shields them from responsibility for what they do, which helps them get rid of competition so that they have, better than a monopoly, a oligopoly, a triopoly, or a duopoly. Because if there's 2 or 3 companies with very complex contracts, with the cell phone companies, they can raise prices more than a monopolist. And that's their goal, not to be accountable, not to pay taxes. And by the way, Trump did not pass a tax cut law. He passed a tax deferral into the future with interest because he financed it with borrowed money. That's not a tax cut, a deferral with interest.
And the other piece of what they seem to want, I mean, I'm looking at just the numbers here, the number of crypto people who were elected. Crypto spent a lot of money, Ali, to try to get this government that they're going to get. The crypto industry spent more than $130 million on the election. Bitcoiners celebrate as $40 million in a campaign brought down Sherrod Brown, who was one of the small number of anti-crypto members of the United States Senate. 253 pro-crypto candidates have been now elected to the House of Representatives on Tuesday compared to 115 anti. They want to mess with the dollar and flip it to this cryptocurrency, which in many senses is kind of a pump and dump, right? They get rich.
It's a little bit bananas, but there's a whole, Donald Trump's entire company is a pump and dump, right? Like that's exactly what's going on here. But keep in mind, look at the trajectory of the big oil that wants deregulation, right? Drill, baby, drill, and don't put rules on me. Don't have this fake China hoax that's called climate change, all that. So a traditional company like oil, all the way into tech and crypto. It's all the same stuff. These are the things that are ahead of us that we haven't quite figured out how we're supposed to manage. They would rather have somebody say, don't manage it. This is a free economy. Let it do what it has to do. And yet Elon Musk had the temerity to say openly that people are going to suffer a little bit. There's going to be a little bit of hardship, but we're going to get through it. There's not going to be any hardship for Elon Musk. There's not going to be any hardship for Jeff Bezos. That's the thing. That's the trick, right? The idea is that you all will have some hardship. Stock market's doing very well. It's had its best week all year. That's amazing. But, only the top 10% get most of the benefits from more than half the benefits in the stock market go to the top 10%. So this whole system has been rigged under our noses for this to work. And unfortunately, these are not the basis of the polarizing discussions we had. So a lot of people have sort of missed this, that we've been undoing regulation in this country for a while, and that's what's going to happen as a result of it. They've got free reign. They got 4 years now. You can do a lot of damage in 4 weeks in the regulatory environment, let alone 4 years.
Absolutely. And then on top of that, David, they're going to do massive, they're going to fire tens of thousands of federal employees, which is going to increase the unemployment rate. And then they're going to do mass deportation. And that is going to cost, what's the estimate here? $968 billion in little more than a decade if they tried to deport all 13 million undocumented immigrants in the United States. So the deficit skyrockets up. Talk about what that does to the cost of everything. If you just delete 13 million people who are heavily centered in things like the agriculture industry, the construction industry. I know they don't think those 50,000 federal bureaucrats are going to go out and pick all the lettuce. Who's going to do that work? It means you're going to pay a lot more for food on top of the tariffs that are going to make everything really expensive. Your thoughts on this mass deportation?
Not only are you going to pay a lot more for food and meat, but a lot of the people who came here without permission or with limited permission that Trump wants to remove have American-born children. So we're not only going to separate these families, but your property taxes are going to go up because they're going to have to put millions of children into foster care, into orphanages, and we're going to have to bear the bill for that through our property taxes or sales taxes. In addition, when children grow up in circumstances like that, the likelihood that we will have mental health and criminal problems in the future go up. So the costs of this are way beyond the estimates that focus on just deporting people. And of course, Donald Trump said it'll be bloody. And I don't see how it can be anything but that. So it is shooting yourself in the foot, maybe both feet, to do some of the things Trump wants to do. And if he goes all out doing Project 2025, which Steve Bannon now says, just like Vladimir Putin did after he conquered Crimea, of course that's our plan.
Yep.
Then hopefully the damage, much as I feel for the people who will be hurt, will be so bad that we will see a huge reversal in Congress in 2 years.
Assuming we have elections.
Plenty of time to do damage, assuming we have elections.
Yeah.
Plenty of time to do damage between now and then.